Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A with the great team behind Youth v. Gov. I'm Mary Dossinger. I'm the program manager of RiverRun, and we thank you all so much for being here today with us. We have Christi Cooper, the director of the film, and Olivia Ahnemann, the producer of the film, and two of the incredible plaintiffs in the case, Miko Vergun and Jayden Foytlin. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. I want to get started. It's always the first question I have for any documentary filmmakers, but I'm always really interested in what drew you particularly to this subject. How did you know about the Children's Trust? Did you know some of the plaintiffs? You know, what drew you to it, and what was the timeline of the film? When did you first learn about it, and what got us to the final product that we see today?
Sure. So back in 2011, that's how far back my journey kind of with the story and with the plaintiffs goes. Our Children's Trust, which was founded by Julia Olson, who people hopefully saw in the film. She is the lead attorney on this case. She filed legal actions through her organization in every state across the country in 2011. And I came on board through a partnership with Witness, which is a social justice human rights organization, to create 10 short films about some of these state plaintiffs and the climate harms that they were facing. And so in that was my introduction to Kelsey Juliana from the state of Oregon, Shatescott Martinez from Colorado, and Jamie Lynn Butler from Arizona. They were all featured in these short films. And of course, I got to know Julia and the legal team at Our Children's Trust and had a deep dive introduction into climate litigation and a lot of the legal framework around atmospheric trust litigation, which is kind of the basis of this case. And so in 2015, when this group of plaintiffs filed the federal case, I was already following it. I had developed a relationship with several of these plaintiffs and their families and had kind of worked with them over the years. And in 2016, the spring of 2016, when they had their first win in the district court with Judge Coffin, that was kind of the moment that I knew this was something that I wanted to follow in a deeper way. And I approached Julia and asked her if she would give me exclusive rights to follow the story, exclusive access. And it kind of just, that was the beginning of my journey with this feature film, and started filming right away with the plaintiffs. And and then Olivia came on board. She can talk a little bit about her coming on board, but we finished up in, I guess, filming last spring, right before the pandemic started. We had to cancel one shoot, and we did one Zoom interview, which people may or may not have actually recognized in the film. Just had a, did a deep dive into post and finished it up in November. So it's been quite the journey.
The premiere was at Doc NYC, right, in November?
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Olivia,
and I joined Christi a couple of years ago, and I'd worked on a few films that had dealt with climate change in some aspect of the film. And when Christi approached me looking for some additional producing support, at first I wasn't sure if I was ready to dive into another climate change story, but this one was so different. And Miko and Jayden and their fellow plaintiffs, their story, these young people standing up to the government to sue for a sustainable future and to tackle the climate crisis in a completely different way. For me as a storyteller and a filmmaker, it was just such a fresh way of looking at this issue that is impacting so many of us, on a daily basis now. So I was really attracted to the way that Christi was approaching the story. The case was fascinating to me, looking at the judicial system and these young plaintiffs, really stepping up for their own future was really compelling.
I mean, I agree. As somebody who watches a lot of films and has seen a lot of films about this subject, I mean, that is one thing that drew me to it immediately, is that I feel like a story that we don't hear, and we're hearing it from such a different perspective of these incredible young activists, that it's such an empowering film that I loved it so much. And Miko and Jayden, I would love to talk to the two of you too a little bit about your feelings of being in the film, how you got involved in this case, and also just about your climate activism in general. So Miko, do you want to start and tell us just a little bit more about what you've been doing?
Sure. So I got involved with climate activism at a fairly young age, like a lot of the plaintiffs. And I think it was like started by like at the Oregon Zoo, there's like this diagram, I believe. And it's sort of just like a Save the Polar Bears campaign. But it was like, it's kind of morbid. Like there's basically a sheet of ice, but it's like broken and there's like baby polar bears trying to get to their moms, and it says like help me and save me. And so I was like, and it was basically like save the polar bears, like the ice is melting. And so, and I believe I was like 8 or something, but I asked my mom what that was. And you know, as a parent who, you know, you still want to keep your child's innocence, in the sense that, like, you know, climate change is basically taking away our futures and stuff. So I was wanting to know what it was, and she was a little bit hesitant about it. But my mom, she later got into climate activism, and we live in Beaverton, Portland. So it's very very hippie, very activisty. So it only came natural. And so me and my brother, we started going with her to events and rallies and stuff. And I was very shy, so I didn't really want to speak at any like event or anything like that. But I found out that there were like academies teaching kids about climate change and how to talk about it to their adults. And so I learned a lot of my rhetoric skills through talking with other youth that also wanted to change their futures, and basically make the statement that like our futures are not something to be toyed with, especially with the adults that are supposed to, you know, protect it. And so I got involved with that and started doing speaking at rallies, and speaking at city council meetings, which I was actually met Aji through that, who is a plaintiff. And I remember he sang one of the first songs that he wrote, and it's called Exploding Trains. And I was really inspired by that. And I was like super excited that he was a part of the lawsuit too. So knowing that he was in it, and also doing a lawsuit under Our Children's Trust against the Department of Ecology in Washington, I saw the chance and definitely wanted to get involved with this lawsuit, especially since at the time I didn't have the power to vote. And a lot of the youth in the lawsuit definitely felt the same thing or the same way. And so I definitely saw this as an opportunity to make my statement known, and also just make the message that even if we don't have the power to vote, we definitely want to be involved with decisions regarding our future. So
that's amazing. Jayden, what brought you to the lawsuit and activism?
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat as Miko of I kind of just saw what was happening in my community. Like I had saw my mom was a photographer around the time that the BP oil spill had hit, and I'm originally from Southwest Louisiana, so I was there. I'm from there, and my mom, she took photos. She went down to the Gulf of Mexico, and she was taking photos of what had happened. And I remember she had came home, and there was photos of pelicans covered in oil that had like passed away because of drowning in the oil, and like what happened. And I remember like just asking her about it and seeing all the other photos. She didn't show me it. I remember finding it on my own and then asking her about it, like what happened. And it upset me. It made me really upset. I was like, this is happening in my own community. I lived like 2 hours away from, I wouldn't even say 2 hours away, probably an hour and like a couple minutes away from the Gulf of Mexico. So it was like affecting my community, and I had saw that. And so because my mom was a journalist and she was a photographer, she was like traveling places. She also took photos of what had happened after Hurricane Katrina, even years later, because I wasn't born during Hurricane Katrina, but she took me with her to see how it affected the poor communities in the South. And I remember I had went and whenever I had met this old lady and we were helping her fix her house. And I had met Elizabeth Brown, which is one of the lawyers in the lawsuit. And she had asked me, she was like, or she didn't ask me then, she just met me and she talked to me like a regular kid. But I was there with my mom, just like seeing, because I was getting interested in activism. And then on my way home, she calls my mom and talks to her about the lawsuit. And I didn't know they talked about it until we went to the store in Louisiana. There's this store called the Piggly Wiggly.
We got those in North
It's like
Carolina
really only
too.
in the South.
Yep.
Yeah, it's only in the South. And I remember being in the Piggly Wiggly and my mom was just like, hey, like, I know you've been interested in this and there's this opportunity, and I wondered, you don't think that you have to do this for anybody else. Do you want to join this? And I was just like, immediately after I heard it, I was like, yes. I was looking for an opportunity to get into activism, and knowing that I was going to be with a whole bunch of other kids that have that same interest, or not even an interest, that same worry of climate change. It really like inspired me, because again, I'm from Southwest Louisiana, and it's very oil dependent. Most people that live there, like their fathers are like the most, like the biggest job in Southwest Louisiana is being in the oil field. People move from different states to Louisiana to be in the oil field. So I never really had like a peer group that was like supportive of me being in activism, and that's why I jumped to the opportunity to be in the court cases, because I was like, one, I'm showing the courts that, like Miko said, I can't vote out officials, I can't do anything. The only thing I could do was join. And so I took the opportunity to show the courts, and I joined for can you hear me? It's freezing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I can hear you.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We can hear you, Jayden.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, my connection went out again.
Oh no, it's okay. I can.
Yeah, but that's how I got involved in the case.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was going to ask both of you too. Outside of the case, did you have any hesitations with being part of a huge documentary when you were approached with that, or was that sort of a part of the deal with the case by the time you had joined on? Because I always think about that with documentaries. I'm amazed that people allow their lives to be filmed and shown. I'm just kind of curious how both you, Miko, and Jayden felt about the documentary itself, and having seen it now as well.
Well, as a shy kid, I was kind of hesitant of being on camera, but after doing a lot of like speaking engagements and all that, and especially since my mom was like, if you are shy on camera, you have to know that this might get press, so you will be on camera most times or in articles, and some of those, and there will be positive feedback, but there will also be negative feedback. So she definitely let me know that. And I thought about it, and even though I was very, very shy, and like, I don't know, like rejection and like people like being mean on the internet is like such a, especially like kids trying to fight for their futures, is like definitely a scary thought to me. I went for it just because I feel like maybe not like me, but like the message that like Youth v Gov has was really important. And at the time, especially in different areas in the United States, but at least in Oregon, I remember when youth activism was not a thing. And granted, like social media networks such as like TikTok and like, Twitter, they weren't as universally used as they are now, I feel like. So just like spreading that message about, what should be fought for, and like things that we should be concerned about as youth, wasn't a thing. So I definitely remember me and my brother being like the only kids in the room, and adults being like, I'm here for my grandkids, I'm here for my children. And, like no one asked us for our opinion, which was kind of ironic. But when I met Christi, I felt like she had great intentions, and I definitely felt like from the way she wanted to document the story of Youth v. Gov that she was going to put out a great documentary. So I was definitely not worried about it.
Jayden, anything to add?
Yeah, I feel like at the beginning of it, when I had joined, it was already set that there was going to be that documentary, so I was just used to it. But I remember when I first found out, or the first time I got interviewed, I was so shy, and I was thinking, I was like, what if people don't like my story? Like, what if people would get mad? Like, what if I get a lot of backlash? But then when I got older and as I worked with Christi more, I was just like, they're gonna hear this story. Like, I don't care if people get upset. Like, this is what I had to live through. This is what I had to go through. And if people like give me backlash for it, then that's okay. Like, I really don't care. I loved working with Christi. I loved working with the lawsuit. I loved like everything that I've gone through. So I was afraid at first, and I was shy, like Miko said, but I think as it went on, everybody became less camera shy, and everyone was just like, I can't wait for this to come out.
I think you can see that a little bit in the film too, actually. It's kind of fun to see, you know, see everybody growing as the film goes on, and getting, you know, gaining more power and the power to speak out, like you mentioned, Miko. And it's so awesome. And thank you, both of you guys, for putting yourselves out there like that, because it's really incredible and added so much to the film. So thank you for that. One thing I want to talk about more on the filmmaking side, Christi and Olivia, however much you want to talk about this, but one of the things that amazes me about documentary filmmakers is, as you mentioned, you've been dealing with this story since 2011. So you had already started with some of the short films, and then you've been filming for this for over 5 years. So how do you even begin to go about then telling that story? I mean, I think you did an incredible job with framing the story and having the time pass as it did, but I just can't even imagine how difficult a process that is, and how much stuff you have to give up to get the story to where you want it to be. And just talk a little bit about that process, if you could.
Sure. I think when I started with the story, and the interesting thing was, I think a lot of filmmakers have the opportunity to kind of develop their story before they jump into production. And I didn't have that luxury. When I decided that I was going to follow this story, it was full on, and I had to, you know, rock up with my camera in my car and just start filming, and with no budget, nothing, you know, prepared. I hadn't gone through the normal development stages. So that was a little bit challenging. But it also gave, you know, the lawsuit has been so drawn out over time that it definitely gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time over those couple of years of not only gathering the stories, but figuring out how I was going to tell it and what were the important elements to me. And the more I learned about the case, and the more the case developed, and the more experts that they brought on board, and the more evidence that was, you know, that we found and researched, it you know, that was, I think, a helpful component. But in the beginning, it was really hard to convince funders of what I could see in my head, but not necessarily convince them that what they thought were 3 films, I actually wanted to be 1 film. And how was I going to, like, you know, blend that into something that made sense. So it was definitely a process, and bringing on Olivia and my team growing, I think was definitely like part of the process for helping to shape this. And, you know, when Olivia came on, she helped me to bring on 2 fantastic editors who were really great with story and helped me kind of put this together. We had the opportunity to start out our post-production process with a nature and focus residency that I had at the Jacob Burns Film Center. And so we were together in a house for several weeks, living together, living this story and shaping it. And once we also figured out that the best way that we could tell this story was to use the 3 elements of standing as our 3-act structure for the film, then that really helped us to figure out what pieces of the plaintiff stories were going to help move the overall story forward. And So, starting out with, the impacts in the first act and showing that the plaintiffs had been harmed, and then moving from there into the evidence and showing who had caused it and that the government was to blame. And then landing in the third act and whether or not the courts can provide that remedy for these plaintiffs and where the courts perhaps got it wrong. So that was super helpful, but definitely, Olivia, maybe you want to talk a little bit about our test audience and like how that really helped us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process that we went through with Youth v. Gov is what every filmmaker does. You come out of the field and out of your big production push with this wealth of material and footage. And then the hard part is, how do you piece that together into a compelling story that people want to sit and watch? And like Christi mentioned, us building out the team, she had carried this film by herself for so many years, and then hiring 2 editors to come on board and a story consultant, and moving from production to post-production, just bringing some fresh eyes also to sort of help unpack what Christi's vision was for the film. I think it was really, a useful and helpful part of the process. And then on top of that, we get to having a rough cut, and we started testing it with different audiences. And usually you do that in person, and last year we did it virtually, and we would share the film with a list of questions about what was working and what wasn't, and we'd take that feedback and go back into the edit room and make adjustments to the film to really try to make it clear, bring it together, enhance the things that were working and take away the things that were confusing people or weren't landing with people. And we did that a couple of times, both in a rough cut stage and a fine cut stage. So that really helps inform the process too. It's a long road. I think we were in the edit room for 48 weeks or something like that. So close to a year.
That's amazing. We're running out of time a little bit. Sorry about that. But
No problem.
I want to make sure we end, and if you can fill us in on any of the new updates that you have with the case and with the film as well, and how people can support the film and the cause as well.
Yeah, so I can talk about the update on the case. So basically, in 2019, we went to Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they basically ruled a few months ago that the case violated the separation of powers between the courts, so the judicial branch, and the political branches, the legislative and executive. Even though it's happened before, like with Brown versus Board of Education, where the courts ruled that the government basically desegregate schools. But they ruled that even if the government violated our rights, then they can't do anything about it. So we amended the complaint to take away the remedy, or the specific remedy, which is the climate recovery plan, scientifically based, and left it open-ended so that the courts could decide what to do. And this basically follows the format of the Brown versus Board of Education. If you remember history, it was broken into 2 parts. So one was basically saying that the government was harming the students by saying that they were taking away their ability to equal access to education. And then it was, the second part was that the remedy, which was desegregate the school. So it basically follows that same format. And so right now we're asking for the courts to rule that our constitutional rights are being violated, and then basically leaving it open-ended so that they can decide what the specific remedy should be, or what the outcome should be.
That's great.
Yeah, and this definitely has the opportunity. I think the plaintiffs and the legal team feel very hopeful that this amended complaint goes back to Judge Aiken, who was the judge who ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. And so I think there's a lot of hope that she will allow this case now to proceed to trial if they are truly allowed to amend their complaint. And there's also some opportunities for the Biden administration to come to the settlement table with the plaintiffs and to take a different stance than the previous administrations took in terms of you know, what their defense stance was of not wanting these young people to have their day in court and be able to present their evidence. So that's really exciting about the case, and we're really hoping that people will support these youth. They're also introducing a resolution on Earth Day to the House and the Senate that they're really needing a lot of support around. And we're hopeful with our impact campaign for the film that we hope to launch later with our public release, that we can really be providing resources and tools and engagement, in particular for young people around the country, to hold their governments accountable around the climate crisis. So that's kind of going to be our primary focus with the impact campaign.
That's amazing. And can people check that out on your website? Is that right?
Yep. They can go to youthvgovfilm.com, and people can also learn more about the website at ourchildrenstrust.org. And for the North Carolina audience, Our Children's Trust also has a state case in North Carolina, so you can go to their website and learn a little bit more about how you can support the youth in North Carolina who are bringing the state government to court and holding them accountable.
That's so incredible. And we thank you so much for your work and staying with this story for so long. And in particular, Miko and Jayden, to you for being a part of this. And honestly, from me, thank you so much for allowing RiverRun to share this story with our audiences. We're really honored to be able to be a small part of this story's journey. And we really, really appreciate it. And thank you all so much for taking your time to talk to me today. And thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. We're thrilled to be part of the festival. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. It's a real honor to be part of the RiverRun lineup this year. Thank you.
Thank you.